I had no idea you had been stashing all that money away. And we're married, so there's no reason why I shouldn't be able to use what's ours. It's worse that you've been keeping it hidden from me and acting like you're better than me, I said, feeling frustrated. My husband and mother-in-law just kept talking like nothing was wrong. I couldn't stand listening to them any longer, so I decided to confront them with the truth. Oh, by the way, have you even checked the balance of our account recently? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Let me introduce myself. My name is Zephyr, and I'm going to be 41 this year. I've been married for 16 years, and before that, I worked at a company. After getting married, I quit my job and started working part-time at a local supermarket. I met my husband, Braxton, at work. Back then, I thought he was just a regular, kind man. But that opinion changed about 6 months into our marriage. One evening, while I was getting dinner ready, my mother-in-law showed up at our house without warning. Braxton wasn't home yet, so I figured there might be something urgent, and I let her in. As soon as she stepped into the living room, she sighed dramatically. Zephyr, you've just been sitting here watching TV all this time while my son, Braxton, is working hard at his job. Don't you feel bad? She said, looking down on me. I had been watching TV for a little bit, but I was in the middle of making dinner. Yes, I had the TV on, but I've been in the kitchen preparing dinner. I finished all my chores this morning, worked my shift at the supermarket, and just got back from grocery shopping, I explained, feeling frustrated but trying to stay polite. However, I still apologized. I'm sorry. But that didn't stop her. She strutted into the kitchen and started criticizing the meal I was making. Oh, dear, is this all we're having for dinner? Poor Braxton. He works so hard, and this is what he comes home to, she said, shaking her head in disapproval. I had planned on making curry with a salad, and the salad was already chilling in the fridge. Dinner's not finished yet, I replied, hoping that would satisfy her, but she didn't let up. How could you serve him such a half-hearted meal? What did you even learn at home? She sneered, not only insulting me but also taking a jab at my upbringing. At that moment, I couldn't hold it in any longer and snapped. Did you come over for something specific? She stared at me, wide-eyed, as if she couldn't believe I'd dared to talk back. Oh my, there's no need to get so angry just because I made a comment about dinner, she said, pouting like a child, and then plopped down on the couch to watch TV. I asked again, what is it that you need? It's not about what I need. Shouldn't you be offering your mother-in-law something when she comes by to visit? Have you no manners at all? She scolded me. You're so inconsiderate. Not even a cup of tea? Poor Braxton. She kept repeating, as if that phrase justified everything she said. So, I made her tea, hoping to avoid further conflict. Of course, she complained about the tea too, calling it cheap. I was younger then, still trying to avoid arguments with my husband's mother, and I thought maybe I should just tolerate her out of respect. But the more I stayed quiet, the more she took advantage of the situation. She started dropping by unannounced even more frequently. And every single time, she criticized my cleaning, said I was lazy, and found fault with anything I did. Her constant nitpicking wore me down to the point where I couldn't take it anymore. I decided to talk to Braxton about it. Hey, can you ask your mom to cut back on the number of visits? It's starting to get really stressful for me, I said, trying to stay calm.
Why?
Is it such a big deal when mom comes over? He responded, seeming completely unaware of what I'd been dealing with. You've seen it yourself. No matter how much I clean or cook, she always finds something to criticize about me. It's exhausting, I explained, hoping he would understand. Well, that's because mom just wants you to work harder, so she's a bit strict with you, he replied casually. I'm doing my best, but when she shows up without warning, I can't even finish cooking or anything, I said, hoping to get some support from him. If you're bothered, then say something to her yourself. Just remember, mom cares about us too, he said, brushing off my concerns like they were nothing. It was as if nothing I said mattered to him. No matter how hard I worked to clean the house or improve my cooking, my mother-in-law would always find something wrong and never once gave me any praise. One time, she brought over vegetables that were almost past their expiration date, and when I pointed it out, she just ignored me. This became my daily reality. She criticized everything, and Braxton refused to stand up for me or even acknowledge how it affected me. Slowly, I began to realize that I was the only one truly working to hold things together in our marriage, while both my husband and his mother took advantage of me at every turn. I ended up using the vegetables for dinner, despite knowing they were close to expiring. Of course, my mother-in-law sighed dramatically and said, "You're serving your husband and his mother these wilted vegetables?" That's when it truly hit me. She was just trying to bully me. Her constant criticisms were no longer about the house or the food. They were about putting me down. Fed up with her behavior, I decided to talk to my father-in-law. I explained how hard it was to cook meals for her when she showed up without warning and how stressful her frequent visits had become. To my surprise, he had no idea she had been visiting us so often. He apologized right away, saying, "I thought she was going out for dinner with her friends. I didn't know she was bothering you, Zephyr. I'm really sorry." "No, it's not your fault," I said, trying to brush it off, though I appreciated his apology. "She's always out and about, so I've been giving her money for meals when she goes out, but I guess she hasn't been using it for that, has she?" he asked, sounding concerned. "Unfortunately, no," I replied. He apologized again and promised to have a serious talk with her. I felt a little better, thinking things might finally get easier. But a few days later, I got a phone call from her. Her voice was sharp and filled with resentment. "How dare you run to my husband like that? You're really ungrateful," she spat, catching me completely off guard. "What? That's not true. I'm not being ungrateful at all," I said, trying to defend myself. "I've been going out of my way to check on you, and this is how you repay my kindness? You should be the one apologizing. It's audacious to claim you're inconvenienced. I'm teaching you what your upbringing failed to. You should be thankful," she snapped. "I understand, but it is a bit difficult when you come by without notice. It makes it hard to prepare meals and clean properly," I explained. She shot back, "Does a mother need to make an appointment to visit her own son's house? My parents would never do that." "You are so bold, talking back to me like this. As a daughter-in-law, you should adapt to the ways of your husband's family." No matter how much I tried to reason with her, she only got angrier. Eventually, she started yelling so loudly that I couldn't even make out her words, and then she hung up on me. I was shaken. It seemed like she had only called me because her husband wasn't around, and I didn't feel like talking to my father-in-law again would help. It seemed pointless. Even though she started visiting a bit less often, my mother-in-law didn't stop showing up completely. My husband, meanwhile, seemed oblivious to it all. He would come home, complain about work to his mother, and she would shower him with sympathy. He clearly had no intention of asking her to stop visiting. With him acting that way, my mother-in-law became even more cheerful and bold. They would sit in the living room, chatting and laughing while I cleaned, cooked, and served them. It was as if I didn't exist except to be criticized. "Zephyr, you don't respect my mom enough," Braxton would say. "That's right, Braxton. Tell her again," his mother would chime in. "And why is she only giving you a small allowance when you're the one earning the money? She's such a devil of a wife." They would continue eating the meals I had made, criticizing me as they did so. When I was washing the dishes, Braxton would casually demand, "Prepare the bath for me, too." He expected me to get everything ready, from the bath towels to his pajamas. His mother, of course, never corrected him or told him to help out. Instead, she would say, "Poor Braxton, having such an inconsiderate wife." Once again, I talked to my father-in-law about the situation, and he apologized profusely. But despite his good intentions, nothing changed. I was exhausted from trying to keep peace in the house while my mother-in-law continued to undermine me. Then, something happened that pushed me over the edge. One day, I noticed that the necklace my own mother had passed down to me was missing. I searched everywhere for it, but it was nowhere to be found. When I asked Braxton about it, he shrugged and said coldly, "You probably lost it because you're careless." I was sure I had kept it safely in my drawer, so his response only made me more upset. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The mystery was solved when my mother-in-law showed up at our house again during dinner. "Mother-in-law, about the necklace." I started, trying to approach the topic carefully. "Oh dear, it's disgraceful to covet something someone else is wearing," she interrupted, with a smug smile. Around her neck was the necklace I had been searching for, the one my mother had given me. It had a very unique design with a distinctive ornament, and there was no mistaking it. There she was, wearing it right in front of me. "Please give it back." "That's my necklace," I said firmly. "How awful. Are you accusing me of stealing? Not only are you desiring someone else's belongings, but now you're calling me a criminal. It just shows how poorly you were raised," she taunted, smiling triumphantly. I was furious. Unable to control myself, I reached out to grab the necklace. At that moment, my mother-in-law let out a dramatic scream, just as Braxton walked in the front door. Without even asking what happened, he shoved me hard. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall, and crouched down in pain. Looking down at me, he put his arm around his mother's shoulders and said, "Just like Mom said, you've been bullying her while I'm not here, haven't you?" "That's right, Braxton. Zephyr has been awful to me." "I've only been trying to get along with her," his mother added, playing the victim. "No, listen to me. The necklace your mother is wearing is the one I said I lost." I tried to explain, but he cut me off. "I don't want to hear any excuses. Mom, let's go out for dinner tonight. Zephyr needs some time to reflect on her behavior." "Such a sweet boy. Braxton really is a good son," his mother cooed as they walked out the door together. I was left alone, seething with anger and shock. I couldn't believe what had just happened. My husband had sided with his mother without even listening to me, and my necklace, the precious heirloom from my mother, was still in my mother-in-law's possession. At that moment, all the frustration and resentment I had been bottling up finally reached its breaking point. That very day, I made up my mind to take revenge. I had another conversation with my father-in-law, who, as usual, listened carefully and apologized sincerely. During our talk, I found out that even he was fed up with my mother-in-law's outrageous behavior. This revelation gave me the push I needed to finally set my plan into motion. The next time my mother-in-law came over, without learning her lesson, she proudly flaunted the necklace in front of me, clearly enjoying my reaction. I decided to act calm and said, "Oh, I just remembered I forgot to buy something at the store. Could you watch the house for a little while?" Normally, she would have snapped back with some snide comment like, "How dare you ask me to do something?" But this time, she smiled sweetly and said, "Of course. Why don't you take your time? You're always so busy with housework." "Thank you. I'll be back in about 30 minutes, I said, pretending to be grateful. I left the house, my heart pounding, as I headed to the supermarket. My mind raced with thoughts. If I could get solid proof of her wrongdoings, my revenge plan could move forward. Part of me still hoped, deep down, that they would reflect on their actions and change, but I wasn't holding my breath. Exactly 30 minutes later, I returned home with shopping bags in hand. As I entered the house, I found my mother-in-law and husband sitting in the living room, already eating dinner. "You were late, so we started without you," Braxton said nonchalantly. "Dinner is more plain than usual tonight. Don't you feel bad for Mom?" I stood there, stunned. "But I asked Mother to watch the house while I ran out to buy something," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "No more excuses, Zephyr. Be more careful next time," he scolded, becoming even more arrogant in front of his mother. Looking at the nearly empty pot with just a few pieces of vegetables left, I wasn't even angry anymore. I just felt disgusted. They hadn't even bothered to leave me any food. It was at that moment I realized there was no hope of them ever changing or reflecting on their behavior. After cleaning up the dinner mess, I went to check the trap I had set earlier. Just as I suspected, it had been triggered. Seeing that, my husband smirked at me, his expression more repulsive than ever. His triumphant smile was exactly like his mother's smug look whenever she flaunted the necklace. I couldn't help but laugh at the absurdity of it all. The day of my revenge arrived sooner than I thought. On one of Braxton's days off, both he and my mother-in-law called me into the living room. They were in high spirits, and I played along, sitting across from them as if nothing was amiss. "Hey, why didn't you tell us?" Braxton asked with a grin. "Tell you what?" I asked, pretending to be clueless. "About the bank account," he said, a note of accusation in his voice. "You had all that money saved up and you didn't think to tell us? Now you can help Mom out too." I'm not sure what you're talking about, I replied, keeping my cool. Don't play dumb. We're talking about your bank book, my mother-in-law chimed in. Oh, that, I said calmly, without any sign of panic. I could sense they were starting to get suspicious, but they were too wrapped up in their excitement to stop. They happily laid out paperwork in front of me, estimate papers for a new two-family house. My mother-in-law gleefully explained, "We've bought a new house for both families. Isn't it great? It's a single-family house, but you and your father-in-law can live upstairs and Braxton and I will live downstairs." What do you mean? I asked, pretending to be slow to catch on. Braxton, growing impatient, explained, "We signed the contract using the money from your bank account. Paying for the house in full means no interest, and it's just smoother this way." Wait, hold on, I said, narrowing my eyes. Why would you move forward with this without even consulting me? You really hate me, don't you? My mother-in-law said dramatically. That's why you're upset. You don't want to live together. Hey, don't talk to her like that. Braxton snapped, trying to defend his mother. Who's being disrespectful here? I shot back. You two used my money without my permission, and you have the nerve to accuse me of being rude? The room fell silent. They both looked at me, shocked that I was standing up for myself. What's wrong with you? Braxton finally muttered. People with bad manners always have sharp tongues. I struggled to hold back my laughter at how ridiculous they sounded. They had no idea what was coming. Despite how awful they had been, I had no regrets about what I was about to do. We found the perfect house, my mother-in-law continued, ignoring my growing frustration. We've already signed the contract. It's too late now, so you don't have a choice. Braxton added, we didn't know you had saved up so much. And since we're married, there's no reason you should complain. It's shared property. That's right. My mother-in-law chimed in again. Besides, it's worse that you kept it hidden from us. I smirked. By the way, did you check whose name was on the bank book? They both froze at my words. Slowly, they glanced at the papers and back at me, their faces draining of color. What the hell is this? Braxton stammered. It's exactly what you see, I said, unable to hide my amusement. Why is someone else's name on the account? Braxton demanded, confused. I never said it was my bank account, did I? I replied, savoring the moment. So, what does this mean? You stole someone else's bank book? My mother-in-law spat. Who's the real thief here? I asked, my voice calm but cold. You went out of your way to break into a locked drawer and take something that wasn't yours. But you were hiding it, she protested. Oh, so it's okay to steal from your daughter-in-law if she's hiding something? I shot back. I guess that's how you were raised. Don't talk to Mom like that, Braxton shouted. You should watch your mouth. Do you even know why your father gave me that bank book? I asked, enjoying the look of confusion on their faces. They had no idea what was coming next, and I was ready to drop the final bombshell. Lately, I had noticed my mother-in-law's spending habits had spiraled out of control. Not only that, but both she and my husband had taken a vacation, claiming time off from work under false pretenses. They had lied to his company, saying things like he had a fever or had gone back to visit his parents. I knew this because I got a call from his department head, who was shocked when I revealed the truth. Realizing they were caught, my husband and his mother exchanged nervous glances. But I wasn't about to let them off the hook that easily. Just then, the doorbell rang. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. I walked to the door and welcomed our guest into the living room. When the two of them saw who it was, they let out a small gasp. My father-in-law had arrived. I had called him earlier, and now he stood before them, his face filled with disappointment. Why are you here, Dad? My husband stammered. I've told you countless times not to cause trouble for Zephyr, my father-in-law said firmly, his voice calm but stern. But. My mother-in-law tried to protest, but he cut her off. There are no buts about this. When will you two start behaving properly? He demanded, his patience clearly worn thin. My husband looked down, trying to find an excuse. Dad, she had your bank book. So, what if she did? My father-in-law snapped. And stop calling her she like that. I didn't raise you to be so disrespectful. You're too old to still be calling your mother Mom all the time. It's embarrassing. And if you can't respect your wife, what's the point? But she doesn't treat me well either, my husband whined. Are you saying you're not being treated well? I've worked hard to make sure you had a comfortable life, and I even saved up a decent amount of money. I let you live the way you wanted without any financial restrictions. And now, you expect me to ignore how you've mistreated your wife. His voice was filled with disappointment, and each time my husband or mother-in-law tried to make an excuse, my father-in-law shut them down with even harsher words. They were left speechless. Then he delivered the final blow. As for that bank book, I gave it to Zephyr. I told her to take it as a nuisance fee because I'm fed up with how much trouble you two have caused, despite all my warnings. Both of them stared at him in disbelief. And to think, after all that, you went and used the money to buy a house. What more do you want from me? Neither my husband nor my mother-in-law could say anything. My father-in-law took her by the arm and led her out of the house. But before they left, I pointed to the necklace around her neck, the one she had stolen from me. My father-in-law quickly demanded that she hand it over, and I was able to recover it at last. As they left, my husband seemed to grasp what was happening. He forced his mother to bow her head in apology before she disappeared through the door. But it was too late for apologies. In the now quiet living room, I pulled out the divorce papers and placed them in front of my husband. He looked completely deflated.
Why?
Why are you doing this? He asked, confused.
Why?
I repeated, incredulous. After everything that's happened, you still think we can stay married? But you're only mad at Mom, he pleaded, trying to shift the blame. Of course I'm furious with her, but I'm disgusted with you too, I said bluntly. No, I won't agree to the divorce, he said stubbornly. Then we can take this to court, I replied. You'll have to explain everything you've done there. And don't forget, your company will find out about your lies. His eyes widened in fear. What? No, you're bluffing. Oh, I'm not bluffing, I said, enjoying the look of panic spreading across his face. We've got it all on camera. We recorded you and your mother breaking into the locked drawer and taking the bank book. No, you're lying, he protested weakly. It's funny how you can accuse others of being thieves when you're the one stealing, I said, shaking my head. What kind of upbringing did you have? Why would you do this? He asked, still not understanding the gravity of the situation. All of this will become public if we go to court. And by the way, you'll be responsible for paying back the $600,000 you stole from your father, along with compensation to me and the court fees. What are you going to do now? He sat there in stunned silence. How can you be so cruel? He finally muttered. Cruel. I laughed bitterly. You still don't get it, do you? Maybe we should have her father come in and explain it to you again. I handed him the divorce papers, and with that I was finally free. My husband was left speechless and defeated. As for the $600,000, my father-in-law insisted I keep it as compensation for all the trouble I'd been through. Under his supervision, my ex-husband and mother-in-law were forced to work tirelessly to repay him every cent, which amounted to around 120 million yen in total. A while later, I received an email from my ex-husband, sent from some free email address. It was a pitiful attempt at reconciliation, but I didn't even bother reading it. I deleted it without a second thought. Now free from all the stress they had caused me, my health improved dramatically. With the money I received from my father-in-law, I've been able to live life on my own terms, enjoying my freedom and peace.